Hi, in this video we're going to go over how to use Google Sites to set up the framework for a digital breakout, or some other form of game using locks in Google Forms. In a previous video we looked at how to set up those locks with Google Forms, and now we're going to look at how to put it together. This is not intended as a comprehensive review of Google Sites, but rather the basics of what you need to set up this environment. So first of all, you'll note that I'm already logged into my Google account over here. You can use the waffle, or you can just type in sites.google.com to get to your Google Sites. You may wind up here at Classic Sites. It's taking a second to load. But this is the older version. If you do wind up here, you want to go to the newer version. Come on, there you go. And to get to the newer version, you're going to click on New Google Sites, and it'll bring you over and show you any new Google Sites you might have. Now, in order to make an additional site, you're often going to find this in the lower right-hand corner, a plus sign. Right now, I'm seeing it up here. Okay, recent change. So we're just going to click on that and get a blank site. And that should create a site for you right away. First thing you want to do is give it a good name. What you type in this upper left-hand corner is actually going to be the file name. You're going to find that in your Google Drive. So this is something you'd like relatively short and succinct, but descriptive. Okay, digital breakout test. There you go. Now, what's going to go here and potentially here are things that are a little more intuitive, because these are things that the user is going to see. So I would make these something to do with the actual theme. Instead of calling it a digital breakout, you're going to have some kind of theme going on with this thing. And that's what should definitely include as the title to this homepage, and probably also the shortened version here. So, for lack of a better topic, okay, so I'm going to put the title up here. Okay, now all the basics of a Google site apply. So essentially anything that you see on the page or anything from here can be added or edited. If I click on the box, that's how I get my editing options. So you can see that this is currently set as a title, which is appropriate. I could bold it, italicize it, I could change the alignment of it. Now I've moved it over to the left of that box or back to the center. I could make this into a hyperlink. Here you go. I want to make it as a hyperlink to Google. Not actually something I'd like to do, but to make something a hyperlink, you just select it and drop the link into there. Now this becomes a hyperlink. If you ever want to remove it, click on it and hit the trash can. That will remove the link, not the text itself. Okay, this would strip off any formatting on it. So whenever you see that and you click it, okay, you can see that the formatting that was applied to it was the alignment. So that was removed, and then I can always delete it right here. Now if I click on the larger section, the main header section here, you can see that the options I have for that are to change a header type, which would mean I can make it narrower, I can make it into a banner, I can make it into a large banner, I can make it into a cover. Okay, I can also change the image. So kind of cool, you can either select an image, but these are going to be fairly limited. You can select an image from what Google provides. You can see there's a little bit, not too much. You can search for one on the web. You can go to your Google album. Probably the simplest way is if you've downloaded an image, be careful of copyright, but if you've downloaded an image and a large image for this space here, you simply say change image, upload, and then you can browse and you can pick that image there. those are the basics. I could also, trash the entire thing, although that wouldn't be appropriate here. Now, when you're working with a page like this, you have a couple of simple options here, and you have some more specialized options below. But basically, if I click text box, it just gives me a place to type. Okay, so here I'm just giving an explanation of what's going on. So, kind of a welcome page to give some context to users as to my scenario and as to what they're expected to do. Now, again, in the text box, it's going to start out as normal text, but you have a couple of options you can pick, not many. It's not an environment where you're going to be able to say, I want a 14-point font or something like that. You're going to pick by category. So since we've already used our title up top, it would be appropriate to use a header here, and then this is all plain text. If you had subheadings, you could pick this. Small is generally reserved for footer at the bottom of the page. So here's where you lay out some of your information, etc. If you wanted to include an image, you could do that. I simply click images here, and then I could select or upload. Let's do a select in this case just to be quick. Google image search. If you want to preserve these things, you're going to be better off in finding an image that you have access to, that you have rights to, downloading it and uploading it. Because if I do this Google image search thing here, and the website changes, they rename this, they pull it down, they reorganize it, I'm going to lose this. So if you've built a nice breakout and you've kind of linked to things that are on the web, you risk them not being there next year. So if you want an image, you do that. You can always drag these to position them on a page. You can always click on them and then click a corner. Notice I'm not distorting the image, I'm almost cropping the image as I go. If I were to hold the Shift key, let me undo that for a second. If I were to hold the Shift key, it would keep things proportional and keep the same image in the window. Now you can say that I've made it a size, there you go, now it's in the center. If I fail to hold the Shift key when I do this, it's kind of doing an approximation. It's doing a combination of resizing the image and cropping the image depending on how I change the relationship between the height and the width here. Now, of course, I could always delete that. I could create this as a link itself. I could uncrop it, so that's going to bring it back to its normal proportion. Or I could actually use the crop tool itself here to kind of, there you go, work with the image and get the portion of the image that I wanted. Other options you have in here would be to replace image. Of course, I could always just delete it and put it in another one. To add alt text or to add a caption. Now, a difference here is if you add a caption, it's going to display underneath. I'm going to get some tools as far as alignment, bold, italics. I can make them into lists, basic formatting tools here. Whereas if instead I pick alt text, and this is something that you should do, is this applies that text in a way that it can be read by a reader. So that is really helpful and should be done for visually impaired users. Now, you may not expect to have any in the class, in your particular class, but it's just good practice to take all images and add that alt text so that they're accessible to visually impaired users. If something doesn't really convey any meaning, if it's purely decorative, if it, this does contain meaning, it's showing me an area on campus, but if it doesn't show any, you would click this. This is a decorative image, and that information would be provided to the person's reader. Okay? But in this case, I don't want to do that. Okay, so that's basically how you work with things on a page. If you click on them, you're going to see that the options are presented to you. The way this is built is it's built in blocks. So every time I add something, I get a complete row. If I don't want it on a new row, I can grab those boxes, reformat them, and then drag things around and try to get them, multiple things on a single line if I want. There's some limits to how I can format it. You see, I can't drag this to the bottom. It's got to sit to the top. But I could play with that by making maybe this maybe a little narrower, and taking my image. Obviously that affects the crop on it a bit, but you can play around with it until you get what you want. Okay, other options you have here, I'll go over very quickly. We've looked at text box images. Here's where you can just grab something directly from your Google Drive. So I'm going to get something random right now, but there's a form, and I can insert that. So there it is. Again, exactly the same. I can drag this out and change the shape of it. I can drag it left or right and reposition it a little bit. Drag it over there a little bit to make it balanced. And there you go. And if I don't want it anymore, I can do two things. One is I can just delete the actual item, so now I no longer have the form. My alternative, and let me put it back there a second so you can see it. My alternative would have been to delete the entire block. Sometimes you have multiple things on a block, and you can just, do that over here, and it will get rid of the entire block for you. Other options for your blocks would be you can change the way they look a little bit using these styles. Emphasis 2 is more dramatic than emphasis 1. You can add a background image like you could to any section. Got to be careful with that. It can often be confusing and busy, so you got to be careful with that. The other thing is if I've got a section here that's basically very similar to another section I want to create, I can always duplicate, and now I've got two of them, and I can just make my edits to one of them. Let me delete those. I'm going to show you this embed code, which is really, really useful. This is a way for me to take either another web page or an object and stick it right in the page. And I found a fun one that's particularly useful for Digital Breakout or some other game that has a time restriction on it. Okay, this is tickcounter.com, tickcounter.com, and it's basically a countdown. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, well, let me pick 2020, and I am going to pick, I don't know, April. So I'm in April of 2020, and I'm going to say this is due by the 24th, and it's due by the 24th at 3 p.m., although I could set minute and seconds. And you can see it's created a counter for me that's telling me I have 4 days, 3 hours, 55 minutes, and, steadily shrinking section of seconds here. I can click Create Countdown. It's right there. I can say embed on your website, and it's going to give me this code. So I can just copy that code, come back to my Google site. Oop, looks like I left my site, so there it is. And I can simply say embed, and there's two things here. If I just have a web address, if I didn't get this embed code I got from the site, I would have to use the URL, but since I have the embed code, I'm going to click on that tab. I'm going to paste that information there. I'm going to say next. It's going to show me a preview, and I'm going to insert it. Now from there, this is great. I can change the shape of my box. I can now make this bigger. Do some basic formatting to it. I can grab the handle here. I can move this up to the top if I wanted that to be the first thing you see under the header on the page. And kind of a cool thing you can embed. Not a requirement, and if you find something else, that's great. If I wanted a different type of page, this would not be the best selection, but let's just say that I wanted this Google search page. I can come in here, I can copy that address, come to the bottom here, embed that. In this case, it's a URL, so I can paste that in. Cannot embed because of search permissions. Okay, because of permissions, so Google's not going to allow that. Let's try another one. Let's just try rampo.edu. I'm going to grab that address, and I am going to embed it. And here, and now the Rampo web page, a live version of the Rampo web page is right inside my own page. If I go to preview, this is what a user would see it like. So here's my countdown, my pictures, my text, and here's a working copy of the web page. If I continue to click on things, you'll see that they load right into my page without disturbing the rest of the page. So kind of a cool feature. Okay, click the X when you're done with the preview, and I'm back on my page. Okay, one last thing I want to show you. You can always get anything you want from your Google Drive. In the section underneath, you can also get specific things. So this would allow you to search for forms or for sheets or for slides, docs, Google Maps, Google Calendars, YouTube videos. These three are special. You can put in collapsible text. So if I do that, I type something here. Here I'm going to put in, let's say, some information that I'll create as a bulleted list. If you now see when I preview it, all I see is the header. If somebody clicks on it, it opens up into this, it opens and closes. So it's a nice way to contain information that can be expanded without making your web page very long. Okay. Okay, come on. Okay, I'm back. Okay, you can put in a table of contents. I'm not going to go into that now. You can try to figure it out. And also an image carousel, which is kind of nice. And here you just select this series of images. I'm just going to take some that happen to be up here. So there's one for Mawa, insert. Add another one. And you'll notice that I can click multiple images at one time and say OK. And this has created a carousel for me. So you could use this as a feature on your site, although it's really just an extra. You may or may not decide that this is useful for you. Let me go to a preview mode for that. And you can see that you're now giving a picture carousel. And if you were to leave this alone, there's some settings you can do on this to get it to automatically rotate. Okay. Last thing we want to take a look at, and I'm kind of junked up this page a little bit, is these are just pre-made formats. So if you chose one of these like this, it would just save you the time of trying to build this type of layout. So I can say I'm going to select an image from my photos. So there's one. Insert it. Select image. Notice that it crops it to try to maintain that shape, that sizing that's already in place. And it just gives you a nice block here for text. And then gives you some space to type some information underneath. Notice all your formatting tools come up. So the basic set of formatting tools that are available to you are available to you for those particular functions. Okay, let's take a look now at Let's take a look now at a basic format for setting up an actual digital breakout. Now do we know how to use the tools? Okay, under pages, you can see that right now I've just got a home page. I'm going to create additional pages. Now, how you create them makes a difference. If I just hit the plus sign down here and make a new page, escape form, done. Notice that it's on the same level as the home page. As a matter of fact, if I want to change this, I come up to home and I'm going to go to properties. And instead of saying home, I'll just say welcome. Or I don't even have to say welcome. I could put the name of my breakout, or I could put something dramatic up there. And you can see that changed not only here, the name of the page, but also in this menu that it's now creating up at the top. Now, very simple way to do this. You've got a welcome or an introduction, maybe something like that. You've got the escape form. So now if I click there, I'm on the page. And I can go back to insert, back to my drive. I'm going to go to recent here. And I'm going to find that this digital breakout form that I created in another video. And I'll give it right here for them to use. Okay, so this is where they're going to try to work their way through the form. Now, this being said, it's going to be better if I provide them with some context. So there's some text, and up here, I tell them a couple of things about this, using the form, or I try to, hook them into it with some exciting language. Now, I'll go to preview for a second here for the escape form. Note that when they're in this mode, they're going to see this box with an arrow, a diagonal arrow in it. This is important because if you're going to be moving throughout the site back and forth and you start to fill out this form, when you move to another page, you're going to lose your work. Okay, so a student's going to answer 2 questions and get them right, and then go back to look at clues, and they're going to lose those 2 questions. Now, they can always retype them, but a good thing to let them know is that if they do click on that little box with the diagonal arrow, it's going to open in a new window. And now you can work back and forth between these without losing your work. I'll close those up for now. Okay. Okay, so we've got the basics of the site here. I'm going to come back, and in here I'm going to continue to create pages. They don't have to say clue 1, clue 2. They could be more descriptive, or they could say clue 3. They could just say what clue number they are, or they could be a little more descriptive. You have to decide on what's going to be better for your students. And you can see it's creating them here, but it's not doing them in a particular order that I like. So I'm just going to take escape form and I'm going to drag it up here. And I'm going to put these clues in order. Okay, so now there's a welcome page. This should provide them with the context that they need, the scenario, things like that. Here's a page for the escape form. And here are your clues. So I'm going to use all my tools over here to either give them information or likely provide them links out to get information. For clue 1, as a student, coming to preview here, as a student, I would come in, come in on this and get the information that I needed, and I would be told to go to the escape form, to break that out into a separate tab, and then to work my way through my clues here, clue 1, then provide the answer, clue 2, come back and continue, etc. until I was done with the breakout. Most important thing here is that you provide the information and the organizational structure for your students so that it's easy for them to know what to do. That's really what it comes down to. If you're going to do this as teams, you've got to get some team rules up there. You've got to tell them what's acceptable. You've got to give them the proper information to allow them to be successful. Okay, notice down at the bottom of the page, you'll see one more thing, this add footer. This is a nice feature that they added after a period of time to Google Sites. If I say add footer, it's just going to give me a space here to create something that appears on every page. Okay, notice that the text is automatically set to small, but you can put information in here that's more or less documentation information, things that would appear on every page. I mean, I could, normally down here on a website, you'll see copyright information, things like that, which you're welcome to put in if you'd like. But you can see that you do get your basic set of tools in here, so that if you wanted to put a digital, a numbered or bulleted list or make something a hyperlink down there, you could do that as well. Now, when I created that on my Clue 2 page, but if I come to my Clue 1 page, you're going to see that it's there. And if you come to the welcome page, you're going to see that it's down there as well. That's the purpose of a footer, is that it's going to appear everywhere. Now, once you have your site built, you're not quite done. You can see it. This preview mode is nice because you can kind of test it out and see what it's going to look like. But that's not going to work for your students. So in order to publish this for your students, you're going to come up to the publish link. You're going to give it a unique web address. So you can see it says rescue, and that seems to work here. If I picked something that was unavailable, it would tell me it was already taken. So I would have to keep playing around. See, test 1 is taken, test 1, 2 is taken, one test, more than likely test 1, 2, 3 is taken. So you would have to play around with this address until you found something that wasn't taken. Okay? So there you go. Once that's done, you have an option here where if you pick this, it will not come up in a Google search. So Google will extract it from its information for web searches. But if you want to make this public and let other people use it, you can leave it unchecked. That's up to you. We're going to say publish. And once you've published it, you can unpublish it using the little arrow next to the publish button. So if you decide, no, I don't want it out there, you can unpublish it. But what you're normally going to do is just say view published site, because this is the link you're going to provide to students. Technically you can do this. You can go right to your site name, and that will bring you to your home page. If you did include the name of the home page, it would take you to exactly the same place. And then from within here, of course, students can move around. You'll notice the address is no longer that very cumbersome address with all the random characters in it. It's nice and neat. And just remember when you're providing this to students that you select the home page to get them started at the correct place. Also, you do have this little edit link. Your students won't have this. Google recognizes that you are the creator of this, and it's just a shortcut to get you back in to where you can make edits here. Both of these things are exactly the same now. I can close one of them. If you do make a change, even a small change, I decide that I want that formatted like this instead. Your students are never going to see this. It will save automatically, but they're never going to see it unless you decide to publish again. When you do publish, you are publishing the entire site. So, if I've made changes on 2 or 3 pages, I'm just going to click publish. So here I'll demonstrate that. Okay, I've changed this again. I came to Clue 1 here, and I added a space, and then I came to Clue 3, and I added an X for some reason, and I go to publish. you can see I can view the changes that I've made over on the left for each page. But when I do publish, I'm not publishing one page. If I come back to publish now, it's going to say there are no changes because it will publish the entire site every time I hit publish. So if you are, if you've made some changes you want to push up, but you've also intend to make some changes you're not ready to go live, publish the complete changes first, then make the other changes you want to make, and hold off on publishing them until you're ready for them to go live. Okay, probably a little more information than I intended to give you. This video is certainly longer than I intended to, for it to be, but that should be enough information to get you going. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some really cool digital breakouts. Remember, these don't have to be breakouts or escape rooms. Use your imagination, use your creativity. I'll have the requirements posted, but basically you're looking for some type of game that's scenario based, that uses a Google form to control the flow of the game, to basically create locks that students need to unlock in order to be successful.